Hello there guys, Hirosaki here. This story is all about what if Naruto was a lost soul. The eve after Kyuubi's attack, Konoha is low on strength. The council agrees to turn Naruto into a living weapon. But years later, after Sarutobi's death, will Konoha's weapon continue to defend it? Or will he poise his blade to carve out their throats? Please like and subscribe to this channel before we begin, and check the description box for the author of this great storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 1, Prologue. 7 ANBU Black Ops stood before the Hokage. The aged man looked them over with a stern, serious gaze. 6 of them had normal Umbu masks while the 7th, also the shortest of the group, had a simple faceplate, not unlike the Kiri Hunter Elite. Its slit eye holes revealing only the faintest glimmer of the true eyes lying beneath. Report. Sarutobi commanded. The captain, wearing a hawk mask, straightened before he answered. Hokage-sama, mission success. The IWA daimyo and his family are all dead. Casualties? Sarutobi spoke. The Umbu captain looked to the fox-masked shinobi. None, sir. He said after a moment. Kaden efficiently demolished the opposing enemy force, leaving us to go after the daimyo and his family. Sarutobi took a puff of his pipe. I see. He stated thoughtfully, is anything else you wish to report, Captain? The ninja seemed to shuffle nervously from foot to foot before he took another glance at the plain-masked ninja before shaking his head. No, Hokage-sama, he said. In truth, he wanted to scream out at the old man. What he had seen had not been a fight, it had been a massacre. The bodies of all the enemy ninja were practically ripped to pieces or burnt to ash. Nothing but dust, bones and blood had remained of them. He was no stranger to death, and in the end, better than him. But it was unnerving. He knew who this boy was, and knew that what he'd seen today would only be the start of his strength. Should the dog ever come off its leash, none would be able to rein it in. Still, he would hold his tongue. Perhaps because, despite his brutal efficiency, he felt he owed this thing for ensuring all his men made it out safely. Or perhaps it was a mild respect. Or perhaps it was far simpler than that. Perhaps the most powerful emotion that held him back was the fear. Fear of the retribution the young fox would dish should he speak against him. Sarutobi nodded. Very well, you 6 may leave, Kaden, you stay. The designated men bowed before shuffling out of the room. Sarutobi looked to the last remaining Umbu in his office. Remove your mask, please. The short Umbu wordlessly removed his mask, revealing a blonde-haired boy with whisker-like birthmarks on his face along with the calm cold blues that were his eyes. He could be no older than 6. Sarutobi sighed sadly. His eyes had always been like that. Ever since he could remember, the boy was the embodiment of the perfect shinobi. The perfect tool. The perfect killing device. He hated the council for what they had done. They had left him with an ultimatum. Either he would be trained as Konoha's weapon, or he would be executed. Sometimes he wished he had taken the second option. It seemed merciful in comparison to the empty void he now was. On par with Uchiha Itachi. Perhaps even colder. He sighed again. Now is not the time for this. Many in the council believed that training him like this had been the right call. Too many. No. He would wait, he would bide his time, and then he would set things right. Naruto, I understand that this was your first mission as an Umbu. Yes. The boy spoke. His voice was flat and even, no emotion could be heard in his voice or seen on his face. Sarutobi eyed him for a moment. Are you well? Sometimes Umbu-level missions affect people. How are you coping? Naruto mentally raised an eyebrow. He was confused by this. They were merely enemies that were interfering with our mission. I do not understand why you would believe this would affect me in any way. Sarutobi resisted the urge to sigh. This was so frustrating. It felt like he was half beating his head against the wall. It was sickening. "Never mind, Naruto," he stated before standing. He looked at the boy for a moment, thinking, then he spoke. "I have a meeting to finalize the alliance with the Kazekage of Suna. You are to be my bodyguard." Naruto bowed his head. "As you wish," he stated before placing his mask over his face. Sarutobi felt a pang in his chest at the sight. It was almost like that mask was consuming him. As if it would swallow his soul entirely every time he put it on. He hid his sadness, walked around his desk and out the door. Hokage Dano the Kazekage greeted respectfully as he stood. "I am pleased you have arrived," he said as he bowed his head. Sarutobi smiled and translated the words into non-political, human language. "About time you showed up. Kazekage Dano, forgive me for keeping you waiting. I had some urgent matters to attend to." Sarutobi spoke in that sage voice which indicated he wasn't really sorry at all. The Kazekage nodded tightly. He never did like these meetings, couldn't really bring himself to trust his so-called ally. He suddenly caught sight of Naruto's robed form emerging from the thin shadows in the corner. He wondered briefly when the Umbu had entered the room, and if there were more of them. "Hokage Dano, I respectfully request that our guards remove their masks," he requested, eyeing the strange short Umbu suspiciously. Sarutobi nodded and turned his head to look at Naruto from the corner of his eye. The blonde raised his hand and removed the mask as the Kazekage's guard did the same. The Kazekage, out of sheer curiosity, looked straight at the Umbu as he removed his mask. He immediately regretted the action. Locking eyes with those cold blues, he found himself freezing, his gut churning with disquiet. Those eyes were dead. They showed absolutely nothing, no happiness, no sadness, no anger, not even cold indifference. "Well then, shall we get down to business?" Sarutobi's voice brought the Kazekage back to reality. He tore his gaze away and looked at the old man. "Of course," he replied, giving a slight nod. Over the hours through the night, they spoke over the details of the new treaty between their two countries and the conditions of the alliance for several hours before they finally came to a mutually satisfying agreement. It would be signed tomorrow officially, in a public display, before the Konoha Council, population, and dignitaries from his own country of Wind. As the Kazekage stood in preparation to take his leave, Sarutobi stopped him. "May I have a word in private, Kazekage Dano?" The Suna leader hesitated for a moment before nodding. Their two guards accepted the silent command and bowed their heads before walking out of the room. Sarutobi suddenly sighed sadly as the blonde boy finally exited the room. "Kazekage Dano, I know of what Suna is planning. To create a weapon out of the Shikaku's Jinchuriki." The Kazekage stiffened, his spine going ramrod straight. Sarutobi looked straight into the Kazekage's eyes as he spoke his next words. "I warn you now that if you follow through with this, you will regret it forever." The Kazekage's eyes immediately narrowed. "Are you threatening me?" Sarutobi sighed again, shaking his head. "No, you may do as you wish. I assure you that it will not affect the alliance. It is just..." He trailed off as he turned his head to face the door Naruto had used to exit the room. "You have seen tonight the results of such ambitions." The Kazekage's thought, then his eyes opened a bit more in realization. "You mean that boy?" Sarutobi nodded. "Naruto is Konoha's attempt at a living weapon. We succeeded, but..." He trailed off slightly. "But the price was too high. At least, I believe it was." He then turned to the Kazekage. "Perhaps you might disagree, but if you find that you are wrong, could you live with that crime, I wonder?" As Sarutobi returned to his office, he sat down in his chair with an exhausted sigh. His eyes landed on that familiar mask. "You may go, Naruto," he said, his voice laced with weariness and his face showed his true age. Naruto inclined his head in a short bow. "As you wish." he said, before he turned sharply on his heel and walked out the door. Sarutobi's face twisted in grief after the boy left. It always did. The guilt and anger he felt always gnawed on his insides. The eve after Kyubi's devastating attack 6 years ago tore at his heart. Ate away at him. It hurt just to look at the boy. To see the results of his cowardice. The civilians wanted him dead, the council wanted a weapon, and the dying wish of their savior was left, forgotten in the wake of fear, hate, and ambition. Again, he wondered if it would have been better to have let the civilians have their way. No. He admonished himself as he shook his head. There was still time to save him. Death was finite, life would always provide possibilities at some point. Somehow, he would find a way to undo this. The walk back to Suna seemed to lag on forever to the Kazekage. He longed to see the walls of his home again. But the trip had also given him ample time to think and reflect upon his actions. Mainly, his actions against his son Gaara. The death of his wife at childbirth was an unforeseen consequence on his part. The priest, who had also died sealing the sand demon, had assured him that the only way for the sealing to succeed was for the beast to be sealed while she was in labor. He was never informed that his wife would die from the ritual. Filled with grief and rage over his wife's death, he had struggled to find an outlet, and eventually he could only find one. Gaara. He had blamed Gaara for his late wife's death, and had even cursed his very existence. He vowed to himself that he would cut the family bond of father and son, and that he would turn Gaara into what the Suna village needed him to be. He had almost succeeded in that endeavor. The boy was always alone, always at arm's length from everyone, even his siblings. But now, seeing the living result of such ambitions in that boy from Konoha had truly shook his resolve. No matter what he said, or what he had done, Gaara was still his son. Could he bear turning Gaara's innocent green eyes into the same cold, lifeless hue of that boy's? Could he turn Gaara into what others had been calling him since he was born? A monster? About a week ago his answer would have been easy. But now he truly didn't know. He had seen a glimpse of the future. And he did not like what he had seen. Kazekage-sama. A servant spoke as the Suna leader entered his estate. It is good to see you have returned. We were beginning to worry. He spoke as he bowed lowly. Where is Gaara? Was the first thing that escaped his mouth. The servant looked up, startled at the question. It was very rare for the Kazekage to ever make any mention of his son unless there were reports that he had killed someone else in the village. He is in his room, my lord. Shall I go fetch him? He asked rather uncertainly, afraid. No one wanted to go near Gaara. No. The Kazekage spoke tightly. With a flare of his robe he turned sharply on his heel and walked down the hallway towards his son's room. As he approached, he felt his steps heavy, the clack of his shoes against the wooden floor echoing off the halls. He looked to Gaara's oakwood door and opened it without knocking. And there he was, sitting in the middle of his room, hugging the old worn teddy bear he's had since he was a baby. A gift from his mother, the Suna leader reflected sadly as he recalled his wife buying the toy when she was still pregnant with him. As Gaara turned and caught sight of him, he saw the turquoise eyes widen in fear. The Kazekage didn't know how, but he would fix this. He would undo the wrongs he had committed upon his son and perhaps someday. Gaara. He called. He saw the boy flinch as if struck, an act that sent a pang of something that took him a moment to recognize as guilt through his chest. Come here, boy. Gaara stood and walked over, his eyes meekly down to the floor. He sighed and moved a hand to touch the top of the boy's head when Sand emerged and stopped him. Gaara looked up fearfully. Every time his father saw any form of resistance from Gaara he would always get angry. But he couldn't control it, he didn't know how. The Kazekage sighed heavily as he pulled back, allowing the sand to dissipate. Gaara looked up, for a moment before diverting his eyes. The Kazekage sighed again. Gaara, look at me. he said to the young red-head who raised his head to look into his father's eyes. The Kazekage stared into his son's eyes for several moments before he spoke. I'm sorry. The simple words seemed to have the force of a thunderclap in Gaara's mind, and his eyes visibly showed his confusion. The Kazekage stared at his son's eyes, seeing them change, become sharper, colder, no longer the eyes of a boy, and it sent a chill down his spine. I'll make things right, he said to his son's confusion before he turned and left the room. Chapter 2, The Perfect Weapon. It was late in the village of Konoha when two Anbu from the village of Iwa infiltrated the city undetected. They moved swiftly, slipping past patrols, sifting through the shadows, disarming traps, undoing seals and safety measures easily. Their goal? The Forbidden Scroll. As the two slipped through the hallways, finally entering the chamber with the large marble stand that held the scroll, they took a few minutes to make sure there were no traps. These Konohanin are so stupid, I can't believe they would leave the scroll in such an obvious spot. One Anbu mocked in disgust as he walked forward. Just shut up and grab the damn thing, our bride mentioned the shift change ends in another minute. His partner hissed harshly as he kept watch on the door. The Anbu snorted as he walked forward. With another quick check for traps, he pulled the scroll from its berth and hefted it onto his back. He turned around to his partner and smirked, missing the dark shadow with a black mask that emerged like a specter from the darkest nightmares behind him. Slowly the thing unsheathed two wickedly curved scimitars, one in a reverse grip in his left hand while the other held normally on his right. "Ha, piece of cake." The Anbu scoffed, making his partner turn to him. His eyes immediately widened in alarm. "Behind you," he called as he moved to run towards him. The other, by sheer instinct alone, ducked, narrowly avoiding a swing that would have taken his head off. He pivoted on his heel and prepared to face his attacker. But before he could get a good look of anything other than the mask and Anbu clothing, he felt the air in his lungs leave as a crushing kick connected with his chest. Sickening snaps echoed off the wooden walls of the room as his ribs cracked and broke from the hard impact. He felt bile and blood escape his mouth as he soared across the room towards the far wall. The Anbu that had been keeping watch by the door made a dive to catch his comrade and felt the air leave him as well as he did. He planted his feet firmly on the ground and used chakra to stick. He was astonished that even with doing so he still skidded a few feet before coming to a stop. He placed his comrade down and checked him. The specter watched the scene with apathy. He slowly began walking towards them. His gait steady, even and sure. The Anbu he had previously kicked coughed up blood and clutched his chest in pain. The other Anbu turned and unsheathed his sword before charging. The specter fluidly positioned his blades before he began spinning while simultaneously moving forward. His attacks fluidly coming in high and low. The Iwa Anbu, caught off guard by the strange maneuver, didn't know how to defend properly, so he swerved to the side. The thing stopped as he saw his target move. The Iwa Anbu took his cease in momentum and delivered a sharp kick to the fox ninja's face. It took the blow without even flinching, its face barely moving an inch. Then it turned to look at his stunned opponent before straightening and beginning his onslaught again. The Iwa Anbu again turned to the side, but the Konoha creature knew he would do so and turned the blade he had in his left hand so he could trust. And as he spun again, he dug in his heel, and before the Iwa Anbu could understand what was going on, the ghost thing stabbed his blade dead center into the man's chest, the wicked blade coming out the other side. The Iwa Anbu coughed blood before he looked into the ninja's mask, through the slits of the eye holes, and felt his breath stolen in quiet horror. Those eyes, those empty cold pits of ice, stared straight back into his own unflinchingly. He let out a final gasp before the specter swung his other sword and lobbed off his head with a sickening slice. The other Anbu watched with terrified eyes as his comrade fell, the stink of blood and evacuation of death quickly spreading through the room. His fear-filled gaze towards the looming, ominous form that was now slowly turning towards him, like a dark malevolent evil that had now set its sights on him. The blood dripping slowly off his blades, the crimson fox mask shining in the dim light were the only things truly visible, making him all the more terrifying. He shakily took the scroll off from his back, ignoring the aches in his chest. He extended it forward with shaking hands. Take it. He stuttered, throwing the scroll. The thing fluidly sheathed its blade and caught the scroll, before placing it down and continuing his walk towards the IWA Nin. The ninja's eyes widened before he swiftly got to his feet, fear and adrenaline numbing the pain in his chest as he tossed smoke bombs onto the floor, sending a blanket of gray across the room. Then he rushed to the open window and made a move to leap through it, but the cold metal of a gauntlet wrapped around his throat and slammed him against the wall, holding him firmly 3 feet above the ground. He coughed and gasped, latching onto the Konoha Umbu's wrist in a futile attempt to remove the appendage from his person. The specter watched the man squirm for a moment before he positioned his blade to strike, and went in for the kill. Enough, Naruto. Naruto's blade stopped. Sarutobi, Ibiki, Kakashi and a squad of Umbu emerged from the shadows. The aged Hokage nodded to his interrogator. Take the prisoner for interrogation. I trust you have our mole in custody as well? Ibiki nodded, of course. With a snap of his fingers, 2 Konoha Umbu stepped forward and grabbed his shoulders as Naruto released him. They began dragging him away, Ibiki following closely behind. Naruto slowly sheathed his blade and turned to face Sarutobi. Your orders, Hokage-sama. He spoke, his voice coming out in a deep baritone due to a voice-changing device in his mask so as not to be recognized by his voice whenever he was off duty, which was almost never. Sarutobi sighed. Nothing, Naruto. You may leave. The young Umbu elite bowed his head slightly before turning on his heel and vanishing in a swirl of smoke. Sarutobi sighed again as he turned to Kakashi. Come, Kakashi. He ordered before he too left the bloodied scroll room, Kakashi following close behind. Moments later the two found themselves in Sarutobi's office. The old Hokage sighed as he removed his hat and plopped down on his chair. He looked older then. Kakashi waited as he leaned against the wall, his book nowhere to be seen for once, as he stared at the Hokage, patiently observing. Sarutobi rubbed his forehead tiredly before he raised his eyes to look at Kakashi. Well, he began. What do you think? Effective. Kakashi said, nodding slightly. His fighting stance and execution is near flawless from what I can tell. His precision and coordination is on the money and his general speed is impressive. Sarutobi leaned forward on his desk. What do you really think? Kakashi paused. Off the record? Permission to speak freely, Hokage-sama? He asked after a few seconds. Sarutobi nodded. Permission granted. The copy Nin stated simply with a light shrug. I know the circumstances you faced that day, death or living servitude, but to take it to such an extreme, that boy. He paused to gather the right words. Is more thing than man. Sarutobi sighed and leaned on his desk as he buried his face in his hands. That is why I want to undo the damage. The council has recently lost a number of members that fervently supported the idea of him as a weapon, and more open-minded individuals have taken their place. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. And you're telling me this because? He drawled. Sarutobi met his gaze with a spark of determination burning within his eyes. Because you will be assisting me. Kakashi raised both eyebrows. And how do you propose I do that? Sarutobi stood from his chair and walked to the balcony, lighting his pipe as he did so. He took a puff and slowly let the smoke out of his lungs. Uchiha Sasuke's Genin exam is coming up soon, is it not? Along with that of Hyuga Hinata? He half-asked, half-stated. Kakashi's eyes widened in alarm. He moved forward and stood in front of the Hokage, shaking his head furiously. No. No. No way. Sarutobi took a puff of his pipe and blinked lazily at his younger subordinate. What is the matter, Kakashi? It'll never work for one thing. He yelled, flailing his arms around somewhat frantically. And why not? The older ninja asked calmly. You're planning on putting something like that with two genin? The copy nin recited drily. That would be like sticking a wolf dog in a sheep den, and then being surprised when half the sheep wind up dead the next morning. Sarutobi stared straight into Kakashi's eyes, unflinchingly. I have already failed Minato once, Kakashi. I have a chance to make it right, and I refuse to let it pass me by. You will help me. He bit out in a tone that Kakashi really didn't want to hear again. The copy nin sighed. He knew he was gonna regret this. Naruto slowly walked towards his home. It was a large estate hidden just on the eastern side of the village outskirts. The person that had built the estate was apparently a nature lover, for he had cut down almost no trees, and had apparently chosen a natural clearing in which to build the main house. Other areas of the estate, such as the dojo, armory and library, were built on the tree itself, or around it. Giant tree houses, really? Naruto truly believed this home was simply far too lavish for someone such as himself. He had asked the Hokage only once why he had given him this estate, and had received a confusing answer. It's the least I can do. And the aged man had left it at that. Naruto did not understand what the old man was apparently trying to repay. He did his duty, nothing more, nothing less. Quietly he passed the gate into the grounds, dry and rotting leaves scattered in the wind, filling the night air with their soft crinkling melody. Calm was hardly his companion, but in his home, he found that he could encounter it every now and again, rare as it could be. His first memories were of blood and death, instructors, drilling in the shinobi rules, laws and disciplines for hours on end until he could recite each and every one of them by memory perfectly. Training his fighting style, shuriken and kunai throwing, weapons, focus and chakra control training. All his life was bent around the sole purpose of fighting. To the servitude of the Hokage. Only the one who holds the title could command him, and he would immediately dispatch any other that tried to command him more than once. Over the years he had seen other children his age that lived and enjoyed their lives. He had never spared them a second glance, he had never questioned why they lived one life while he lived another. To him, it was simply the way of things. He would never hesitate, never question, never stop. He was the perfect weapon. Chapter 3, Your Mission. You summon me, Hokage-sama? Came Naruto's altered voice from the balcony doorway. Sarutobi steeled his features and turned to face the young boy. Now in the morning sun one could truly get a good look at him. One could tell the boy had been trained from birth. The council had governed everything in his life until just recently, even food consumption. His diet was literally the healthiest thing Sarutobi had ever seen. Thus, he had grown, making it to a height of 5 feet 7 inches, which is tall for the age of 12. He had his two swords crisscrossing along his back, the black cloak which was specifically designed for the Umbu, so it would not reflect light, was slightly parted, revealing a custom Umbu armor which was red in color with 2 shoulder plates which made him seem much broader, thus increasing his intimidation factor. After all, psychology often won the battle before it was even fought. Sarutobi tilted his hat. I have a new mission for you, Naruto. Naruto bowed his head. Whatever you ask, I shall serve. No, wait to hear it before you accept. He demanded, hoping the boy would question him for once. As you know, 6 years ago Uchiha Itachi committed what is known as the Uchiha Massacre. Because of this, Uchiha Sasuke is the last remaining Uchiha. You also know that almost a decade ago Kumo attempted to kidnap Hyuga Hinata in an attempt to steal the secrets of the Byakugan. We have reason to believe that both of these children will be targeted in the near future. Therefore, they must be protected. Well, it wasn't a complete lie, Kumo could go after Hinata again. Sarutobi sighed. The council and Idashi lied. Have decreed that you are to be their bodyguard. You are to go undercover as a genin under the tutelage of Hatake Kakashi. Do you accept? I understand if you choose to refuse. Whatever you ask, I shall serve. The young Jinchuriki spoke without an ounce of hesitation. Sarutobi sighed a little in disappointment before he nodded. I shall send one of my kunoichi to your estate in order to help you acquire attire for your mission. Sarutobi knew for a fact that the only thing Naruto possessed in his closet were cloaks and pieces of umbu armor. The boy had nothing else, so it was highly unlikely he would know anything about normal civilian wear, since that is what most genin wore. Will I be allowed to keep my weapons? The blonde umbu asked. Sarutobi paused. This was the first time Naruto had seemingly placed any value on any object. Given, weapons were a shinobi's best friend, but still, it was better than nothing. He nodded slowly. You may. Naruto nodded and bowed before he exited the office. Sarutobi sighed as the boy left. Every time he saw those cold blues, or that damn mask, he was filled with so many regrets it hurt. Soon enough the doors opened and his secretary walked in. You called Hokage-sama? She asked politely. Sarutobi nodded. Bring me Yuhi Kurenai, please. Yuhi Kurenai was known as many things in life. The Genjutsu Mistress, the Ice Queen, and a myriad of other nicknames that she would not list out. Still, despite her reputation, it had only been a few months since she had become a jounin. Nevertheless, even having only been privy to the rumors that circled among the jounin for such a relatively short amount of time, she had managed to get right in the center of the gossip network of Konoha. So, it was no surprise that she was nervous as hell as she continued to walk towards the home of the mysterious umbu that was only known as the demon. The rumors about this strange and dangerous umbu ran rampant in the jounin lounge. Stories of how his eyes would freeze your very soul in fear, of how he could single-handedly destroy entire regiments of enemy squads, of how he created flames that could burn the very flesh off your bones. The shinobi worth 1,000 was only one of his alleged names. Possibly the most exaggerated was the claim that he could not be killed. Exaggerated or not, however, she wasn't planning on testing it. So yes, Yuhi Kurenai was very, very nervous. As the dense foliage finally gave way, she gasped at the sight of the strangely designed yet beautiful estate. She half expected for the elusive umbu to live in some secluded cave with torchlights along the entrance. Before she could look around any more, a commanding voice spoke to her right. Are you the kunoichi the Hokage sent? She turned and gulped as she caught sight of a black faceplate mask. She slowly nodded to his question. Still, she knew that Konoha's demon was no ordinary umbu. His voice, she could tell, was mechanically altered to be deeper than it naturally was. He was short, and his body structure, though somewhat obscured by the cloak, was not that of a fully mature man. It was more that of a child. Konoha's demon was a child? Naruto, seeing her nod to his previous question, nodded in return before he turned back on his heel. Then come. The Hokage stated that you would assist me in acquiring clothing that genin normally wear. Kurenai nodded, but wondered just why the hell he couldn't do this himself. Is something wrong? Kurenai asked as she saw him staring at the civilian clothing oddly. This clothing has no armor plating between the fabrics, neither does it possess kunai and shuriken holsters to hide weapons. He stated in a confused tone as he turned to her with a raised eyebrow showing his confusion. Not that she could tell with the mask still in place. Kurenai refrained from narrowing her eyes in annoyance and decided to speak. Forgive me, but it's rather, strange talking with you while you have that mask on. Would you mind removing it for now? She asked. Naruto paused for a moment. It was odd, now that he thought about it, only Sarutobi had truly seen his unmasked face. And the Kazekage during a meeting a few years ago, but the man had probably forgotten, and one other time during a mission where his mask had shattered along the left side, revealing his sharp blue eye to the captain. One Hatake Kakashi, if he remembered correctly, had seen just that one part of his face, but that was about it. He hesitated for a few more moments before he slowly nodded his consent, and with a soft click his mask was removed, revealing his stark blonde hair and whisker-marked face. The baby fat that would have normally been present to some degree on a boy his age was completely gone, revealing angular features. Kurenai sucked in a breath. He was young, he was just a kid. She'd figured he'd be 15, maybe 16, but the face she was seeing was a boy. To think that the Hokage, her village, could allow something like this, it was almost nauseating. She knew of course there were many young people that were extremely powerful shinobi, but she'd thought her village was better than a place like Kiri. Uchiha Itachi had been their last example, and look where that had gotten them. Is something wrong? Naruto's voice brought her out of her stupor. It was still flat and emotionless, but much less foreboding without the voice-altering device and the mask. She shook her head. No, nothing's wrong. These are civilian clothes. Many genin wear them since none of the truly serious missions begin until they're chunin. So, it's not really necessary to have hidden kunai pouch or armor beneath the fabrics. Naruto nodded. It was logical, really. He turned back to the clothes rack and continued shifting through it. What form of clothing would you recommend? He asked after a few moments. Which ones do you like? She asked after a moment. I have never had any need for any other clothing besides armor. I am uncertain what colors are common amongst genin of the village. He stated simply. Kurenai had to hold back from gaping at him. But didn't you have clothes like this when you were younger? She asked incredulously. I have been in Umbu uniform for as long as I can remember. If I did possess civilian clothing at some point, I do not recall the time. He stated as he turned to her. Is something wrong? You are quite red. Kurenai was indeed red. Her fists were clenched tightly. It was common knowledge that children at the age of 12 could, most of the time, easily recall events as far back as 4 to 5 years. For him to have no recollection of ever having civilian clothing then, that meant that the Hokage had placed him in the Umbu when he was 7, 6 or perhaps even younger. She didn't know of anyone anywhere that had joined Umbu that young. Indeed, the standing of the Hokage had in her mind was dropping rapidly. She shook her head and took a deep breath in order to calm herself. All right. She breathed out after a moment. Well, I guess we'll be starting from scratch. It had taken a while, much longer than what Naruto had anticipated, but eventually they had settled on some clothes. Mostly dark colors. She'd been able to convince him on 1 or 2 pieces that were not black, but it would have been easier to pull teeth really. Still, Naruto throughout the day had felt quite, in a way, vulnerable without the familiar weight of his mask. And the sound of his unaltered voice disturbed him. How long had it been since he had heard his own voice? He couldn't remember. So it was with great care that he had left Kurenai to go to a weapons shop where he had acquired a metallic face mask that covered the lower half of his face. As he returned to his estate, he had carefully dismantled his Umbu mask, and had removed the voice-altering device, and had placed it on his new metallic one. Just behind the grill mouth design. His own voice without it was just too unfamiliar for his taste. A testament to just how long he had been using the device. He set aside his new attire and sharpened his twin scimitars. Then took the files of his 2 clients and shifted through them for a few moments before he quietly went to sleep. Kurenai stomped up the stairs of the Hokage Tower, seating quietly. The very air seemed to cackle around her, and no one dared to bar her path, even the Umbu guards at the Hokage's door. They didn't have the balls to try and stop her, maybe Orochimaru or Itachi, but an angry Yuhi Kurenai, no chance in hell. She threw the doors open, ignoring the ruckus she made, and glared at the old man that casually puffed his pipe, seemingly uncaring at the anger directed at him. Mission accomplished, Hokage-sama. She spat out the title like acid, lacing her words with venom. Sarutobi puffed his pipe. Are you angry at me for doing what I must? He asked flatly. She clenched her fists and glared at him, her ruby red eyes shining with fiery fury. She didn't speak, she merely turned and walked out of the room and slammed the door shut, making both Umbu cringe. Sarutobi felt a smile tug at his lips as he watched her leave. Perhaps gaining support for the blonde Jinchuriki would not be as difficult as he once believed. Umino Irika was rarely surprised. Having seen and heard some of the most far-fetched and ridiculous excuses from his students, as well as having been the victim of several pranks caused by said students, allowed him to develop a form of sixth sense to any and all forms of surprises. However, he highly doubted that even with 20 more years in the teaching business could have prepared him for what the Hokage was telling him right now. Hell, 20 years in the ANBU might not have even remotely prepared him for this. In his classroom stood the Sandaime Hokage and a young boy, whose face was obscured by a metal mask. But that wasn't the surprising part. No, the surprising part was what they were saying. The Hokage apparently had a second Uchiha Itachi hidden away in the Umbu Black Ops, and now wanted to place him in a class of Genin to act as an undercover bodyguard for Uchiha Sasuke and Hyuga Hinata. In the face of this, Irika could only say one simple thing. Are you insane? The Hokage took a puff of his pipe. No, Irika, I am many things, but insane is not one of them. He replied calmly. Irika blushed in embarrassment as he realized just what he'd just let slip out to the Hokage. Sarutobi took another puff of his pipe before he spoke. Grant him the Genin test, Irika, he will pass. No matter what his score, you will place him on the team with Uchiha Sasuke and Hyuga Hinata. This is the course of action the council and I have come to agree upon, he said before turning on his heel and marching out the door. His new student following him quietly. Irika stood with his mouth slightly gaping before he sighed and plopped down on his chair. He knew that this was going to be a long day. Chapter 4, Team Introductions. Hatake Kakashi was normally not easily intimidated. Years spent as the Umbu captain had given him a great number of immunities to almost any form of intimidation. However, seeing as how he had the heir of the Hyuga clan, the last remaining Uchiha, and most importantly Konoha's most dangerous Umbu, the demon waiting for him, he decided that he should arrive on time. Which is why he currently found himself here. In Ibiki's interrogation cell. Now for the last time, what have you done with Hatake Kakashi? Ibiki asked in a dangerous tone. Oh, for fuck's sake, I am Kakashi. He yelled for what seemed like the 100th time in 20 minutes. He's not cracking, sir. A Chunin whispered in Ibiki's ear. I know. Ibiki whispered back. But we have to keep at it. Kakashi sighed. It was going to be a long day. Uchiha Sasuke scowled as he glared at the mysterious new arrival that had been placed on his Genin team. Irika was slightly taller than the boy, but even so, his ominous presence towered over the Chunin teacher. His other teammate was at least familiar. Hyuga Hinata was a member of the Hyuga main house, and had all of her insecurities and shy feelings of hesitation furiously stomped out of her by years of living under the iron fist of her father. She was cold and calculative, and had nearly taken the title of Rookie of the Year from him during one time they had sparred at practice. She was practically the only girl their age that did not fawn over him. All in all, he counted himself lucky that he had gotten someone that was useful on his team. The same, however, could not be said about their sensei. The man was approximately 20 minutes late, and it was starting to grate on his nerves. Hinata calmly sat at her desk, her eyes studying the strange new student that had arrived. She would never admit it, never in a million years, but when she had seen him fight during the taijutsu portion of the exam, she had activated her Byakugan. The sight had shocked her. His body was literally a web of inner chakra coils. He had nearly double the normal number of tenketsu, and his chakra had hints of red in it, all things that were almost entirely unheard of. It was not entirely unknown for someone with a great deal of chakra to have a few more tenketsu than normal. The Yondaime himself was said to have possessed roughly 30 extra tenketsu. But still to have so many at such a young age was staggering. His coils were also thicker than normal. She had no urges to face him. Even if it was just a friendly spar. She had He had let none of her shock or unease show on her features and remained as apathetic as possible. Naruto meanwhile stood, staring out the window, still as a statue. He could feel and smell the unease radiating off of his two teammates from his presence. It was nothing new, in fact, he was kind of impressed they were holding up so well. Umbu missions with him had been radiating fear through their eye sockets. Then again, these children knew nothing of his reputation. He watched the leaves fall in the wind, waiting for Kakashi to arrive. He knew the Jounin would not show up for quite a while, but his clients were here so he would remain here. 5.5 hours later, however, Naruto was seriously considering marching out of the classroom and personally dragging the one-eyed, smut-reading Jounin back here personally. All his thoughts of possibly disabling the copycat ended as he heard the door slide open, revealing a very angry-looking Kakashi with a vicious twitch of his eyebrow. Meet on the roof, he ground out before vanishing in a puff of smoke. Sasuke and Hinata sent glares filled with barely contained rage as they each thought of various ways they could harm their new sensei. Naruto said nothing as he slowly turned from the window and walked out the door to walk up to the roof in order to meet his old captain. Kakashi's eye continued to twitch terribly and his face was set in a stone-cold glare, directed just above his students' heads as two of them sat there. Their fury had been a cold breeze in comparison to his. It hadn't taken them long to realize that, so now they shifted a little nervously while the other just stared on impassively. His mind continued to replay the events of his morning. That is officially the last time he was going to show up even remotely early. They had checked his eyes, his ears, took his blood, his fingerprints, his dental records, an X-ray and a sample of his bodily fluids. But the worst of all had been the cavity search. A thrice-damned cavity search, for crying out loud. He didn't even know what could be used in a cavity search to identify someone. He took a deep breath to calm himself down and was about to speak when the Uchiha spoke first. "Why were you late?" Kakashi's eyes lit up with the most unholy fire from the very depths of hell and glared at Sasuke with such intensity even Naruto took a slight step back. "Introduce yourselves," he practically snarled. "Start with your likes, dislikes and dreams for the future." Naruto could have sworn that his normally black eye had flashed red in the form of the Mangekyo for a brief moment. Hinata was the first to recover from the intimidation and managed to speak up. "My name is Hyuga Hinata. I enjoy training. I dislike weak main house Hyugas that abuse branch members," she said, thinking of certain old rotting bastards that were on the Hyuga Council that could barely lift themselves even as they flaunted the feeling of power they held over the branch house slavery. If it was one thing her father had not been able to beat out of her, it was her utter hatred for the caged bird seal. Her dream was to defeat her father, gain the title of clan head, and immediately remove the caged bird seal from all branch members, repercussions be damned. Kakashi nodded. "My name is Uchiha Sasuke. I don't like many things and I hate a lot of things. My dream is more of an ambition. To kill a certain man." Kakashi's single eye narrowed. Should have expected that, he thought, not saying anything. Naruto, however, had different thoughts to his mission as the old man's words passed through his mind again. "You are to go undercover as a genin in order to guard Uchiha Sasuke and Hyuga Hinata. The council and I have decreed that you are the best one to protect them." Sarutobi's orders were to protect them. If Sasuke went after Itachi, it would prove to be quite counterproductive to that goal. Therefore, he had to eliminate such delusions here and now. You do not have the experience, the power, or the skill to even have a hope of matching Itachi. You would be destroyed in an instant. Sasuke snapped his head around and glared at Naruto standing up from his seat on the steps and staring up at the taller blonde. "What did you say?" he hissed with such venom most would have cringed in fear. Naruto, however, was unfazed, sounding quite bored as he stated simple facts. "You do not have the power to stand against someone such as he. Your ambition, such as it is merely a delusion, born from your hate and fueled by foolish pride." Kakashi winced. Naruto was about as subtle as a hammer to the face. Sasuke's eyes flashed and his rage was almost a palpable thing. As he was about to move forward, Kakashi appeared between the two. "That's enough," he said, looking at both of them. Sasuke silently seethed while Naruto remained apathetic. Hinata looked at the exchange with a critical eye before silently shrugging. If Sasuke wanted to fight him, she sure as hell wasn't about to say anything. Kakashi, while still remaining between the two, turned to Naruto. "Your introduction, please," he said. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto, that is all you need to know," he said simply. Kakashi's eye twitched again. "I got the two of the biggest egos in Konoha, and Konoha's living weapon as my Genin squad. I hate my life." He let none of his displeasure show in his face and merely sighed. "Tomorrow, you are all going to have the real Genin test. There is a 66% chance of failure. If you fail, you'll be going straight back into the academy." Hinata and Sasuke looked shocked, yet Naruto still looked apathetic. Before the other two could speak, Kakashi hurriedly spoke, not wanting to deal with the normally amusing faces the Genin made when he said that today. "Remember, it's training area 7. Don't eat breakfast tomorrow, or you'll puke," he said before vanishing in a puff of smoke. The three youths stood for a few moments before Sasuke humphed and left his two teammates. Hinata watched the raven-haired boys retreat before turning her pale lavender eyes onto the last, masked member of the team. He was already walking away. She eyed him for a moment or two before he vanished in a puff of smoke. Sarutobi calmly puffed his pipe and sat in his chair as the roars of the outraged council members washed over his ears. Specifically, the older generation of council members that had yet to retire or die. "What were you thinking, Sarutobi, placing that monstrosity with both heirs of the greatest clans of Konoha? Why would you even place him in a Genin cell to begin with? That monster needs to do what it was meant to do, complete suicide missions until it dies." One female member spoke up her opinion. Sarutobi took a deep puff of his pipe in order to calm his raging emotions. Sometimes he just wanted to take a kunai and pull an Itachi. God knows he could do it. Naruto on his own was just as strong, if not stronger than him was, and two Kage-level nins were more than enough to kill off a few crippled and decrepit council members. He showed nothing of this, however, and spoke in a calm, simple way. "Lady Irito, I suggest you hold your tongue. I may be old, but I am still the Hokage of this village. I have placed Uzumaki Naruto in the Genin team consisting of Uchiha Sasuke, Hyuga Hinata and Hatake Kakashi, because recent information has come to me indicating that attempts may be made on the lives of Uchiha Sasuke and or Hyuga Hinata. Naruto is the best one to guard them, since he is one of our top umbu, and it is very likely that the attempts will be made outside of the village when they are on missions." The council were reduced to simply muttering to themselves, since they were willing to do anything to protect the clan heirs of the two most important bloodlines in Konoha. Finally, one Hamura stood. Very well, Sarutobi. However, once Uchiha Sasuke and Hyuga Hinata reach the rank of Chunin, Uzumaki Naruto should be returned directly to the front lines. Sarutobi's features tightened and he nodded, standing up and walking out of the room. "That is what you think, Hamura? I let this injustice pass once, I swear it will not happen again." Chapter 5, Difference of Ideals. Hinata and Sasuke arrived at the training ground, both still trying to rub the sleep out of their eyes. The sun was just barely peeking over the mountains as the early morning fog began to dissipate. They both caught sight of their third teammate, standing silent as a specter in the shadow beneath one of the trees waiting for them. He turned his head in their direction, barely nodding in greeting. The two Genins each walked forward and sat down. No one exchanged a word as they waited for Kakashi to arrive. Eventually Sasuke and Hinata fell asleep again, trying to catch those last few seconds of rest while Naruto remained awake, silent as the dead. It was several hours later that Kakashi showed up in his signature puff of smoke. "Oh yo-ho," he greeted. "You are late, Hatake," came Naruto's voice in a flat tone which held a distinct edge of annoyance in it. Kakashi waved his hand dismissively. Ma, I'm not late, you're just early. He stopped the nonsense as Naruto turned and glared, clearly irritated. He cleared his throat before he made two hand seals which formed two small streams of water that hit Sasuke and Hinata in the face, startling them awake. Kakashi held in his mirth at their startled expressions, but let a chuckle escape his lips at their mutual death glares. God, he loved these moments. When it looked like the two clan heirs were about to get up and wring his neck, he immediately took out his two bells and his alarm clock. Now then, the purpose of this test is simple. In order to pass, you must simply take a bell from me before time runs out. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. In case you haven't noticed, Kakashi, you only brought two bells. Your powers of observation continue to serve you well, Sasuke. Kakashi said happily as his eye curved upwards in an upside-down U. Then that means that one will automatically fail? Hinata asked incredulously. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the cycloptic Jounin. What are you up to, Hatake? Kakashi cleared his throat, ready. A slight pause. Begin. He yells before vanishing in a black and silver blur. Sasuke and Hinata rush off to hide, not knowing where their sensei has vanished, while Naruto vanishes in his own blur to follow the copy Nin, having able to follow his form rather easily. A few moments later, Kakashi and Naruto stand in a clearing. The former reading his orange book. Though most of his attention was on the living weapon. I am impressed, Hatake. Naruto says slowly, making Kakashi's single visible eye turn to him. Oh, are you now? What did I do to impress you so? Using an exercise that shows the genin they may one day have to sacrifice themselves for the sake of their assigned mission. I did not think one such as you would enact such a test. Kakashi narrowed his eyes slightly. Even though the test is centered around personal sacrifice, it is for one man to sacrifice themselves for the sake of their teammates, not for the sake of the mission. This time it was Naruto who narrowed his eyes, though only in curiosity. You do realize, Hatake, that in the shinobi world the mission is what counts, not your teammates. Kakashi kept his cool facade. It saddened and angered him somewhat that the legacy of his sensei, the man who put the lives of his fellow shinobi above all else, had been turned into this drone that was imbued with the stagnant foolish beliefs of the old shinobi ways. Still perhaps he could bend the truth to suit his needs. A great man once told me, those who break the rules are trash. But those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash. He quoted his old teammate yet again. Naruto remained impassive. Then he was a foolish idealist. The law of the shinobi is quite clear, the mission comes first. I would think the disgrace your father suffered would have taught you the price of such idealism. Kakashi's grip tightened on his book as he reined in his temper. He had insulted both Obito and his father. Were he anyone else, the boy would be in a great deal of pain right now. Crippling pain. He took a deep breath and calmed his temper. He knows no better. This is precisely what we want to undo. I cannot hold him responsible. He looked back up at the boy. Well, Naruto, do you know who it was that told me that? Obviously not. Naruto said. Kakashi smirked. It was the Yondaime Hokage of Konoha. Not exactly true, but perhaps it would serve to shake some of that conviction of the shinobi law out of him. He saw him stiffen and knew that his ploy had the effect of at least surprising him. Naruto indeed felt surprise. The greatest ninja the world had ever known carried such a philosophy? He stiffened for a moment before he relaxed again, shaking his head. It matters little and less who says it. The words are false. Kakashi narrowed his eyes. Apparently this was going to be harder than he thought. Even if the greatest of all shinobi hold that same philosophy? The Hokages were and are the strongest ninjas of the village. Each of them had one thing in common. The desire to protect, to defend their people. They are shields, not swords, Naruto. What does the shinobi law state about that? Naruto unsheathed one of his blades calmly and took up his stance. It is a Kage's sworn duty to lead, guide and protect his village, therefore, they are merely following their own mission and orders, while we follow ours, he stated simply. Kakashi resisted the urge to pull at his hair in frustration. This was gonna be a lot harder than what he first thought. Now, I believe there are 2 bells I must take from you, came the blonde's altered voice. Kakashi barely had time to put his book away and lift his forehead protector before he was forced to leap away in order to avoid a sword swipe to his midsection. As he moved through the air, he took out a scroll and unrolled it. Seconds later an Umbu blade poofed into existence. The copy Nin caught the blade just as he landed on the ground, and in one fluid motion placed it just in time to block Naruto's scimitar. The 2 blades met with a loud clang and Kakashi nearly lost his grip on his blade due to the force Naruto had put behind it. He hit it though and glared at the blonde. You think you can get these bells before time runs out, Naruto? I may have been out of the Umbu Corps for a good 6 years now, but don't think you can just beat me outright. Naruto pulled his blade back before swinging again, batting Kakashi's blade away. He then tried to punch the copy Nin in the face with his left. Kakashi caught his wrist with his right hand and tried to swipe at the blonde's midsection from right to left with his left hand. Naruto leapt up, over the blade. As he came down, Kakashi tried to come in with a follow-up swing. However, now that the blade was on Naruto's right side, the blonde was able to turn the scimitar in his right hand so it was held in a reverse grip and blocked the former Umbu captain's swipe. The living weapon then shoved Kakashi away, making the man lose his footing slightly. He yanked his left hand out of the man's grip and swiftly came with a roundhouse kick that would have connected solidly with Kakashi's face had the copy ninja not seen it coming with his Sharingan and managed to put up a last-minute defense. Naruto's kick still broke through the hastily placed guard, but it had lost all strength in it and did little significant damage. Kakashi rolled with the hit and gave a quick spin which ended with an attempted backhand to Naruto's face, but the blonde blocked it and then threw Kakashi over his shoulder. The copy Nin flipped in midair and landed on his feet and charged at the blonde again. He came in with a fast upward swipe. Naruto back flipped to avoid the swing and then sidestepped several times, narrowly avoiding the thrusts Kakashi sent towards his chest, the blade barely glancing his shoulders. In the trees, Sasuke and Hinata were watching the scene with wide disbelieving eyes. Their movements were so fast even Hinata, with the aid of the Byakugan, could barely keep up with them. Sasuke could barely catch a flash of silver before a swift clash of steel rang against steel again. The resounding metallic sounds coming in so swiftly it sometimes sounded as if they had only hit once. Finally, the 2 shinobi leapt back. Kakashi, just slightly winded as he had not had the need to use such speed in a long time, while Naruto looked as immovable as ever, his constant use of such speed and power having conditioned his body to handle it easier. Naruto then straightened and with a few simple hand seals a gust of wind swooped in out of nowhere, carrying dead and rotting leaves from the nearby forest and fresh ones that had given way under the harsh wind. The leaves fluttered around them, swirling in a mini tornado that did little more than keep them in the air. Kakashi looked towards Naruto. He knew that the blonde was planning something. Whatever it was, he wasn't going to let this happen. He rushed forward and thrust his blade towards the blonde's chest, but just as his blade would have made contact, the blonde vanished out of existence, reappeared behind the copy Nin and delivered a sharp elbow to the back of his head. Kakashi stumbled forward but regained his footing quickly and spun around, swinging his sword at the blonde, but again, Naruto vanished into thin air and appeared at Kakashi's side. The boy spun once before delivering a crushing swing with the blunt side of his scimitar to Kakashi's lower back. The copy Nin felt his eyes go wide with pain and bit his lip to keep himself from crying out. He stumbled forward but then felt all the air in his lungs leave as a harsh knee connected with his stomach. He coughed, but before he could do anything he felt a foot connect with his face, sending him flying upwards. He opened his eyes and then saw Naruto blur into existence in front of him, bringing his sword down in a move that would cleave his skull open. He put his own blade in the way, but before Naruto's blade hit, the blonde vanished again. Kakashi then felt a harsh kick connect with the back of his head. How is he doing this? The copy Nin wondered frantically. How can anyone be this fast? Hinata, however, from her vantage point, along with the chakra-seeing ability of the Byakugan, knew exactly what Naruto was doing. He had taken the most basic of ninja skills and had made it something incredibly deadly. He had first created a tornado of swirling leaves, and then, every time Kakashi would attack him, he would immediately replace himself with one of the leaves anywhere in the swirling mass, while simultaneously removing the signature cloud of smoke. Still, this confused her. In a Kawarimi, the smaller the object, you were replacing yourself with the greater control you needed in order to accomplish it. For him to Kawarimi with a leaf so easily was nothing short of remarkable, especially for someone with so much chakra. She pushed these thoughts aside and instead continued to watch the one-sided fight. Kakashi felt Naruto grab his ankle, the blonde, then pulled him down, so the copy Nin was below him, and delivered a hard, crushing axe kick to the Sharingan wielder's face, sending him plummeting back down to earth. Kakashi crashed into the ground, a massive cloud of dust and dirt being lifted as he fell. Naruto landed on the ground and stared into the hole, waiting for Kakashi to emerge, his sword at the ready. After several seconds that Kakashi did not emerge, Naruto's posture relaxed slightly, and that's when Kakashi struck. In an explosion of earth and debris, Kakashi shot out of the earth directly behind the slightly startled Umbu. He pumped his entire arm with as much chakra as he could and punched the young Naruto solidly in the face. Kakashi tried not to wince as the edge of Naruto's metallic face mask dug right between his knuckles, nearly breaking one. Still, Naruto could attest to the success of the attack as he was sent flying clear across their battleground, crashing into a tree, the wood groaning and creaking as a crack formed on the other side. Naruto snapped his head around and found Kakashi rushing towards him at high speeds, intent on keeping up the momentum his assault had granted him. Naruto put his legs to the tree trunk and jumped up in a flip just as Kakashi's fist was about to hit him. He went over the copy Nin, flipped and landed behind him facing his back. Kakashi turned just in time to catch a foot to his face, making him hit the tree this time. Except this time, it actually broke. Kakashi flipped and landed on his feet, skidding to a stop. He looked up and Naruto again blurred into existence right before his eyes, but this time Kakashi was finally able to see with his Sharingan just what the blonde had been doing. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me. It's that simp dash dot." He got yet another knee to the face. This time, the edges of his vision went dark. He tried to stay conscious, but soon fell into unconsciousness. Naruto approached the fallen Jounin, knelt down next to him, removed the bells and stood. "We pass, Hatake." Chapter 6, Mission to Wave. It had been several weeks since the formation of Team 7. Though if one were to look at them, it would appear as though the team had been set up just a few hours prior to receiving their mission. Sasuke barely tolerated his teammates, and while Hinata had on occasion tried to start conversation with the last Uchiha, there was only so much she would tolerate from the prideful Genin. Add to that the age-old Uchiha/Hyuga rivalry, and you have two people that barely tolerate each other mutually. Then we have the final teammate. Though not particularly rude, the strongest of the group held his silence as if his life depended on it. Never speaking more than a few words, and even then, it was only when it was necessary. Hinata continued her subtle attempts at uncovering the source of the boy's strength through conversation, but she could never get much of anything other than a few clipped sentences. Both the Uchiha and the Hyuga had tried to follow the boy on several occasions, but the masked genin always eluded them. And poor Kakashi was caught in the middle of this chaos. The slightly dysfunctional team were now standing in the Hokage Tower. They had just captured the daimyo's cat, the orange fur ball scratching at Naruto's arm with useless futility as the blonde held him by the scruff of his neck. Each of the team members had different yet slightly similar thoughts. "This is such a waste of my time. I should be training instead of doing this crap. Such stupid missions. I would have thought that Konoha would know how to handle their resources better. Finally, Ryoko and Karu are going to get Lie Dash. Just a flick of the wrist to the right, and this worthless Nico's neck snaps. A flick to the left and up and her spine is crushed. Which way would be best to kill this foolish cat without anyone noticing? Before the blonde could carry out his killing desire, the daimyo's wife showed up and took the cat. Naruto had to smirk as he saw the woman hug the feline to her breasts. He was glad he hadn't killed the feline. This woman's method for doing it was much more enjoyable to watch. Especially as he heard the cat's spine cracking and giving off minor snaps. Yes, the little cat's death would be slow and painful. He would have to pay the woman for her services. The Hokage clearing his throat brought him out of his thoughts. Now then, a new mission for Team 7, we have walking the Inuzuka dogs, painting the east wing of the hospital, cleaning out the horse stables, mowing the... His listing was cut off as Naruto spoke up, surprising his teammates, and nearly making Sarutobi have a heart attack. Hokage-sama. His hollow voice rang out, which had a severe undertone of annoyance in it. I humbly request a higher ranking. Mission that these D ranks. As the words slipped out, he was half surprised himself. But his patience was frayed, his skills were dulling, and if he had to deal with one more of these chores, there was going to be an unauthorized death. Very soon. Sarutobi smirked. That had been the first kind of emotion Naruto had displayed to him in years. Even if it was just simple annoyance, progress is still progress. He contemplated whether or not he should deny the request just to annoy him further, but then thought against it. That might do more harm than good. He slowly nodded and shifted through his desk. Yes, well, we have a C-rank escort mission to the Land of Waves. Should you choose to accept, you'll be guarding a man named Tazuna while he completes his bridge. Kakashi opened his mouth to try to warn his two Genin students of the slight danger this mission could bring, just so they would know what they were getting into when a concentrated level of killing intent washed over him. He slowly turned and saw Naruto glaring at him. Apparently, the blonde didn't want to take the risk that the two Genin would back down. In truth, Kakashi knew this form of restlessness. He had a case of it when he quit the Umbu. Having constantly lived on the brink of life and death to then just suddenly be a jounin, who didn't take nearly as many dangerous missions. For Naruto, who had known the bloodlust in battle high his entire life, to suddenly be on these slow laid-back D-rank missions must find it to be completely nerve-wracking. When there were no protests from Hinata or Sasuke, Sarutobi ordered for them to go get Tazuna. A few minutes later, an old man with a straw hat and a sake bottle walked in. Wah! I paid good money and all you idiots do is give me these three brats? They look like they'll be killed 5 minutes into the fight. Hinata and Sasuke glowered at the bridge builder. Hinata's eyes narrowed while Sasuke's fists clenched. Naruto, however, once again remained completely apathetic. Kakashi, seeing two of his students were likely going to kill their client before the mission even started, decided to step in. He cleared his throat. Don't worry, these are the best Genins in all of Konoha, and you also have me. I'm a jounin. And if I can't handle it, then Naruto most definitely can. He added silently. Tazuna humphed and took a swig of his sake, muttering something like whatever under his breath. Kakashi turned to his team. All right then, meet at the East Gate in 2 hours. That said, the team filed out of the room to gather their equipment for the mission. It was several hours later that the group of ninja found themselves on the road to Wave. Sasuke was at the front of the group, with Tazuna directly behind him, with Hinata and Naruto standing behind him while Kakashi stood a few feet behind them. The silence would seem almost oppressive were it not for the happily chirping birds around them. Hinata had, on occasion, asked questions to Kakashi, but other than a few short answers there was little interaction amongst the group. Tazuna was unnerved by the silence, as was Hinata and Sasuke to some degree. Kakashi didn't care all that much since he had his book. And a talkative Naruto possibly spoke like 8 words a day, so yeah, he was good too. Of course, both Hinata and Sasuke were too prideful to be the first ones to break the silence, and Tazuna didn't have much to say. But then, just as Hinata felt she was about to burst from the feeling of boredom, she caught sight of a peculiar thing. A puddle in the middle of the road. She silently activated her Byakugan and saw the figure of two men's chakra signatures. She was about to say something to Kakashi when the hollow metallic voice of her third teammate reached her ear, making a shiver crawl down her spine. "Quiet," was his stern command as he kept his gaze forward, never even pausing in the slightest. Hinata hesitated for a moment before she decided to keep her silence. If she and her teammate had seen it, Kakashi must have as well. As soon as they passed the puddle, two ninja predictably emerged from the water and wrapped a bladed chain around Kakashi, tearing him to pieces. "One down," one of the nins spoke, before they rushed toward Tazuna. Sasuke leapt up and threw a shuriken, with enough force to pull the chain back until both the chain and the shuriken hit a tree. He then took out a kunai and threw it, hitting the center of the shuriken, pinning both the metal star and the bladed chain to the tree. Hinata acted then, moving forward at speeds that were quite impressive for a genin, and gave a chakra-enforced palm thrust to both ninjas' stomachs. This would have normally damaged either their stomach or liver, but alas, the two merely vanished into puddles of water. Hinata and Sasuke felt their eyes go wide, and immediately Hinata saw the real nins come from her right, ready to wrap her in their chain. Before they even made it 5 feet, however, the black and red form of the third teammate appeared in front of her. The demon brothers continued running, unfazed by the new arrival. As they went to wrap the chain around him, however, both were caught in a one-armed headlock by the new arrival of Kakashi. Kakashi saw the slight twitch of Naruto's fingers on the hilt of his sword and sighed in relief. "Sorry, Naruto, but I want information." With the two nins currently unconscious in his headlock, he turned back to Hinata and Sasuke. "Nice teamwork, you two," he remarked lazily. Sasuke smirked and crossed his arms, and Hinata also looked rather smug at the accomplishment. Kakashi then turned to Tazuna. "We need to talk." The bridge builder gulped down the lump in his throat. All right." It was several hours later that Team 7 found themselves walking down the dirt path that led to Wave Country. After Tazuna had told his tale, Kakashi asked his team whether they still wished to continue, knowing that the next shinobi they faced would likely be a Jounin. Sasuke grunted his response, which basically translated into, "I'm not backing down from this." Hinata had also voiced her opinion. It would be a coward's way to abandon a mission, especially one where others need help. He didn't even have to ask for Naruto's opinion. So, after debating it for several moments, he figured there wouldn't be much harm in continuing, especially with Naruto as his backup should things go haywire. And now he found himself in this situation. "Get down!" The copy nin yelled, tackling Tazuna down, while Sasuke fell to the ground on his own and Naruto covered Hinata just as a massive Zanbato flew over their heads. The group looked up to the sword that had stabbed itself into a tree just as a man with bandages covering his face appeared over the hilt. "Momochi Zabuza," Kakashi said as he stood up and dusted himself off. "Hatake Kakashi, the famous copy nin of Konoha," the demon of the hidden mist said in a slightly amused voice. Kakashi lifted his forehead protector. "Ah, the famous Sharingan, so soon. I'm honored. Still, this doesn't have to get too bloody. Hand over the old man and none of the little brats have to get killed." Kakashi turned to his team. "Stay out of this, I'll fight him." Kakashi said, delivering a pointed glare towards Naruto, hoping the blonde had caught it. The confrontation was short, in comparison to most of the battles Naruto had witnessed. In the end, Kakashi was kicked into the water and was placed within a water prison. "Well, it looks like you lost, Kakashi." Zabuza spoke up, smirking at his beaten opponent, but his smirk died on his lips as he saw Kakashi's own smug smirk. "Why are you smiling, copycat?" Kakashi's smile widened. "Because your problems just got a lot bigger." "Wah." The demon of the hidden mist began, but was cut off as a fist slammed into his face with a sickening crunch. The Kiri Nuke nin was sent flying across the water, skipping and bouncing like a stone that was thrown across a pond. After about 3 skips, the Jounin was able to regain his bearings and flip in midair to land on his feet, skidding to a stop across the lake's surface. He looked up and glared at the blonde figure that was just slightly shorter than Kakashi. He then felt the strange individual's previously masked chakra signature and had to hold back a gasp. What power, this guy, what kind of monster is he? Naruto looked at Zabuza as Kakashi rose from the water prison next to him. Disappointing, Hatake. Your skills have dulled considerably since you left the Umbu. Perhaps I should take over. His altered voice seemed to reverberate through the clearing, his released tenketsu sending waves of power through the air. Kakashi shrugged. He's all yours. Though, you're probably right. I do have to start training again. I'm getting rusty. The copy Nin remarked, scratching the back of his head rather sheepishly. Naruto said nothing, instead he began walking towards the swordsman, unsheathing both of his scimitars, never pausing in his gait. Kakashi walked back to his students and client. Hinata looked startled, though Kakashi had been defeated by Naruto. A part of her figured it was partly luck, and that Kakashi had been caught off guard. Sensei, what are you doing? He could get killed. Kakashi waved her concerns off dismissively. Don't worry, Naruto can handle himself. Zabuza stood and took a defensive stance. Whoever this boy was, he was on a whole other level. Kakashi had nothing on this kid, and seeing how easily Kakashi handed the kid the reins, it was safe to say Kakashi was confident in the boy's skill. Naruto's pace increased, from a walk to a fast jog and then to a full-blown run. He came in with a low sweep with the sword in his right hand, which was blocked by Zabuza. The blonde kept moving forward until his shoulder was next to Zabuza's. He then pivoted on his heel to spin around and swipe at Zabuza's midsection with the blade he held in his left hand with a reverse grip, but that too was blocked by the demon of the hidden mist. Zabuza then countered by wildly swinging his blade to strike at the Konoha Nin. But Naruto moved forward, into his swing, and head-butted the hidden mist ninja in the face, sending him reeling back. The blonde then moved and delivered a solid spin kick to the man's head. Naruto then leapt up, coming down with both his blades in a crisscrossing X. Zabuza placed his own blade in the way and blocked. Naruto batted the blade up, opening Zabuza's guard, and then thrust both blades forward in a move that would have stabbed the Kiri ninja in the gut, but Zabuza was able to twist himself to the side, avoiding the two blades, and then grab them, ignoring the biting edge of steel cutting into his hand. He smirked and raised his sword in preparation to bring it down on the kid. But before he could, a shadow clone poofed into existence and delivered a solid kick to the side of the swordsman's head, making his grip falter. Naruto pulled his blades back and cut 2 deep gashes across Zabuza's chest, not fatal, but extremely debilitating. Zabuza clutched his head and the 2 injuries before placing his blade on his back. Beginning his hand seals, he spoke. You little brat. I won't let some punk like you beat me. Naruto then sheathed his 2 blades and began forming his own hand seals at a rapid pace. Zabuza noticed the boy's hands and knew immediately which would be his jutsu. The Katon, Karyoenden. He smirked. The brat would lose this confrontation. He finished his hand seals at what would have been the same time as the kid, but Zabuza noticed with no little amount of surprise that the brat had added 1 more hand seal to the technique. A water dragon rose behind him and charged at the blonde. Naruto cupped his hand in preparation to breathe out the stream of flame, but Zabuza also noticed his other hand charging chakra behind him. What the hell is that brat doing? Naruto breathed out a huge stream of fire which took the head of a dragon. But then thrust his hand forward, a wind blast coming forward and combining with the fiery beast, making the heat and size of the attack nearly triple. Naruto smirked at Zabuza's terrified expression as the fire dragon plowed straight through his water dragon. Zabuza hastily formed a water wall, but the defense was too little too late as the dragon tore through it and engulfed him in the searing flames. He screamed in pain as the dragon carried him all the way to the end of the lake, where it dissipated, leaving scorched earth and the smell of burnt flesh in its wake. Zabuza weakly opened his eyes and saw Naruto approaching him, his slow steady pace calm and collected, showing no hesitation. Zabuza's arms and legs were burnt horribly, the wounds the small blades of infused wind and the fire dragon had caused had been instantly cauterized by the searing heat. The blonde unsheathed his sword as he stood next to Zabuza, and gripped the demon of the hidden mist by the throat, lifting him up until the man was at eye level. Zabuza stared, for once, seeing the cold blue eyes, and froze in fear. Naruto raised his blade to the man's throat in preparation to drive it through. Die, came his voice as he reared the blade back a bit more. The blonde faintly caught the whizzing sound of a kunai, but couldn't do much more than move slightly, making the blade hit the side of his throat instead of the jugular, most likely saving his life. He coughed blood, though it fell within his metallic face mask, and pulled out the blade with a sickening slice. He could feel the familiar burn of Kyuubi's healing as it worked on repairing the wound, but he could also feel something else. Poison, he thought as his vision blurred, and he stumbled as a wave of dizziness hit him. He could faintly hear Hinata, Sasuke and Tazuna's surprised gasps and Kakashi's footsteps as the copy ninja made his way across the lake to reach him. He felt another presence appear next to Zabuza. He wavered slightly on his feet before he let out an angry roar, and swung wildly, backhanding the mysterious ninja across the face with his fist, earning a glass-like crack that reached his ears. He growled, angry, furious. Careless fool. The last thing he felt was the use of a Shushin and Kakashi calling his name. Chapter 7, Excellent. Hinata sighed tiredly as she rinsed out the wet towel in her hand. They had arrived at Tazuna's house roughly 18 hours ago. Kakashi had placed Naruto in one of the spare rooms and had tended to his neck wound, which Hinata found, to her utter astonishment, was almost entirely healed by the time they arrived. But still, dark blue veins were extending almost entirely throughout his neck, indicating that an extremely potent poison was coursing through his veins. From the red and black blotches that appeared beneath his skin, the poison was a corrosive one, and an extremely potent one at that. That alone should have caused him to have died within just a few minutes after the kunai hit his neck. If the injury and blood loss wouldn't kill him, the poison eating away at his esophagus would have. He had broken out into a fever a few hours after his arrival. Hinata was sure he wouldn't survive it, but she had been completely shocked after his fever had died completely after just an hour or two after they had first detected it. Hinata had activated her Byakugan after that, her curiosity getting the better of her, and was shocked at what she saw. Blue chakra sustained him, pumping through his system at a faster pace than normal, while a ferocious red chakra was concentrated around his entire neck. She looked harder then, noticing that the chakra seemed to be battling something, most likely the poison around his neck as it tried to enclose itself around the wound. Its progress was slow though. She had informed Kakashi of this. Her sensei seemed somewhat relieved at the news, yet also alarmed. After a few more hours, Kakashi decided that they would each take watch over Naruto throughout the night, so that someone would know and be able to alert the others immediately should his condition change. He had taken first watch, staying up until sometime around 10 to 11. She was to take second watch until around 3, and Sasuke would take the rest of the watch until the others woke. So now it was her turn to care for him, and she was bored. It was such a level of boredom that it made dinner at her family's estate look like a festival of loud people. She finished changing the water in the towel, she set it over his head and settled herself against the wall to wait out her guard duty. It was just a few minutes into it that the silence began driving her insane. She let her eyes travel to her, now unmasked, teammate. His angular, lean features, whisker-marked cheeks and striking blonde hair made a strange mix of features really. He looked stronger than any shinobi she'd ever met, while somehow, he also managed to seem more dignified than her father. She giggled slightly at that thought. That was a difficult task to pull off, and yet he did it in his sleep. She sighed at the thought of her father. Not wanting to take the silence, she decided she'd speak with her unconscious teammate. You know, Naruto, they say a good family is the key for someone's success. If so, then I must be one of the greatest failures in the world. My family has taken the term dysfunctional and practically reinvented the damn thing. She paused for a moment before continuing. I mean, seriously, who the hell takes their own brother, sister, cousins and daughters and put a seal on their head that practically makes them slaves on a leash? She gave a disgusted, very unladylike snort. Heartless bastards, that's who. She muttered through her teeth. Now, in the relative solitude of this room, some of her barriers could be let down, allowing her to speak freely of her opinions. She sighed, letting some of the anger leave her. She looked back at Naruto and smiled. You know, you're really a great listener. She chuckled slightly. This is how her hour passed, speaking simple one-sided conversations with her charge. Before she even realized it, her assigned hour had come and gone. She yawned. I'm tired, I wonder how much longer I have to. Her sentence died in her throat as she looked out the window and noticed the grayish hue of light giving way to daylight. Her eyes went wide, she shot to her feet and winced as her stiff joints creaked and cracked in protest. She went to leave, but then decided to change Naruto's towel again. As she moved to lift the wet cloth from his head, a clawed hand shot forward and firmly grasped her wrist. Her eyes widened in alarm and looked down to his just as they opened, revealing blood-red eyes. They're wild, animal-like. She froze, a momentary fear gripping her, like an instinct, and had to soon hold back the urge to vomit as a wave of killing intent washed over. The air grew thick and heavy in her lungs. Before she could comprehend what was going on, she felt an arm wrap around her waist, and she found herself outside the room, standing behind Kakashi. She sucked in an unobstructed breath, finally clear of that oppressive feeling. Naruto. She heard the copy Nin call. Calm down. You're not in danger. He yelled. The others of the house were emerging from their rooms, each wondering what all the commotion was about. Naruto slowly stood, his crimson eyes shifting. Looking through the whole room, his eyes finally landed on Kakashi's masked face. He was mildly delirious, Kakashi noticed. A possible problem should the blonde consider him to be the enemy. His eyes shifted from the blood-lusting red to crystalline blue after a moment. Hatake. He heard the blonde whisper. Kakashi sighed in relief. At least he wouldn't have to fight the blonde again. That was not something Kakashi believed he could do safely without at least 3 or 4 more months of extremely intense, guy-level training. The red chakra and killing intent drained out of the room, and Hinata found that she could look at him again without feeling herself getting choked. Naruto hissed and clutched his neck in pain, remembering the last time he was conscious. He narrowed his eyes in anger. That Hunter Nin would pay very, very dearly. He grunted and made to walk when a wave of dizziness hit him. He swayed on his feet and had to grasp the wall to keep himself steady. He clutched his head and resisted the urge to growl. What the hell had that blasted hunter poisoned him with? Kakashi, seeing his unasked question, spoke up as he ushered Hinata away and everyone back into their rooms. You've been knocked out for nearly a day. Don't be surprised that you're still not at your full 100, that Hunter Nin hit you with one of Kiri's more exotic mixes. I'm surprised it didn't take you longer to wake up. He took out a plastic bag with the poisoned kunai on it. I had Pack and sniff it, and he says that it doesn't smell like any poison he's ever seen. He also said it smelled potent, and was more than likely highly acidic in nature, so I suggest you take it easy for the next few days. Zabuza won't be coming back for at least a week. Maybe even 3, and even then, he probably won't be at his full 100, either, so you can rest. I'll handle Tazuna and training Hinata and Sasuke. Naruto shook his head as he slowly eased himself down. No, if Usuman says that he has never seen this kind of poison, then that can only mean one of 2 things. Either it is a new poison that has not yet reached Konoha Umbu, or he made it himself. I find the second option to be more likely, since poison herbs can be found quite easily in Kiri. If so, then that hunter has obvious knowledge of herbs, both poisonous and medicinal, and, being a Hunter Nin, he has knowledge of human anatomy and functions. Therefore, he can speed up Zabuza's recovery. Kakashi finished sighing. I'd hoped you'd still be delirious enough to just let me take over. He muttered, scratching the back of his head. Naruto refrained the urge to twitch in annoyance at his former captain's laid-back response. Instead, he took a deep breath and spoke. Perhaps, you should guard the bridge builder while I train the Hyuga and Uchiha. Kakashi immediately responded with a resounding, resolute no. He cleared his throat and regained his composure before he spoke again. I mean, you're still injured in Aha. I wouldn't have to return to Konoha with the Hyuga and Uchiha heirs half dead from whatever the hell you'll put them through. You need to get as much rest as possible. He finished somewhat lamely. Naruto humphed. I will be fine within 1 or 2 days rest. I suggest you inform the Hyuga and Uchiha that they will be joining me for training tomorrow at dawn. He leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes, indicating the conversation was over. Kakashi tried to think of something that would deter him, but other than his health he couldn't think of anything. He sighed and stepped out of the room. It appeared as if he would have to get flowers soon. Either for a hospital room or a funeral home. Hinata and Sasuke quietly walked through the forest. The sun was just peeking its golden head over the horizon. Kakashi had barely let them eat breakfast before ushering them out of the house. He said to just keep going, and they'd reach a training field where they could, well, train. Hinata didn't know just how the hell they were supposed to train themselves, and Sasuke was wondering just why the hell they had to go out to a clearing in the middle of nowhere when they could have easily trained near Tazuna's house. Their questions were answered, however, as the trees parted, revealing their third teammate, clad in his black clothes and mask, waiting for them. Good, you have both arrived. He stated in his simple monotone drawl. Hours of meditating had dulled the burning in his neck to a dull throbbing ache. That still didn't mean he was through. He still had to regain the chakra he lost while expelling the poison. And the increased use of Kyuubi's chakra was throwing his control completely off. It would most likely take the rest of the day for Kyuubi to stop his chakra flow in order for Naruto to regain his chakra control. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. How the hell are you even standing? That hit to the neck would have killed anyone else. He asked incredulously. It is none of your concern, Uchiha. The Jinchuriki stated simply. Sasuke grits his teeth in anger and was about to speak before Naruto cut him off. I will not answer any of your questions, so do not waste your breath or my time. Sasuke glared at him. Hinata, seeing the tense atmosphere, decided to intervene before a fight broke out. She probably wouldn't have done this normally, since she knew her masked teammate would win rather easily against either of them. But Naruto had been hit with both a highly debilitating injury and a very potent poison, and for all she knew he could be struggling to stand. She stepped forward and addressed him. So, you will be training us then? Naruto nodded. Yes. I assume, Hyuga, that you have completed the tree climbing exercise, since your clan focuses on precise chakra control. He stated more than asked. Hinata nodded. Naruto then turned to Sasuke. Have you completed the tree climbing exercise? Sasuke grunted and crossed his arms. Why the hell would I learn how to climb trees? Naruto turned to Hinata. Show him the exercise and explain the purpose of it. Once you have done that, join me down by the river. That said, he turned and left the two, Sasuke glaring holes into the back of his head while Hinata turned and sighed tiredly. Shouldn't the instructor train the students equally instead of leaving one student to deal with the responsibility? Did that even make any sense? Hinata shook her head to clear the cobwebs and began instructing the last Uchiha on the chakra control exercise. Moments later, Hinata walked through the trees until she came across a decent-sized river, with Naruto standing along the embankment. He turned to her and nodded, tearing her out of her thoughts. Good, you're here now. Is it safe to assume you know the water walking exercise? She nodded. He nodded back and shifted through one of his pouches before removing a card and tossing it to her. Now, mold chakra into the card and we shall see what your elemental affinity is. Hinata nodded and the paper card immediately became drenched in water. A water elemental? I suspected as much. Naruto seemed to pause for a moment as his voice escaped him with something akin to self-satisfaction, and Hinata could have sworn that a slow, evil smile spread across his face had it not been for his mask. Excellent, came his hollow voice, making a shiver go up her spine. Chapter 8, Twisted History. Hinata lay panting against the hard ground, her face was smudged with dirt, her clothes were torn, cut and burnt in several places. There were also hints of red, indicating that she was also bleeding somewhere. She weakly opened her eyes as the tip of Naruto's scimitar touched her exposed neck. I remained disappointed, he drawled. Hinata glared at him through her exhaustion. She struggled to stand, her leg muscles protesting against the strain. Naruto, though he wouldn't admit it, was mildly impressed by her stubbornness. Most people he had hit that hard wouldn't get back up for the rest of the day, if at all. And yet here she was, a mere genin upstaging them all. You have yet to complete your exercise, Hyuga. I expected more from you. Her glare increased tenfold. I can't concentrate if you keep on attacking. Do you expect your enemies to stand idly by and wait for you to attack? I suggest you begin your attack now before I decide to strike again. Hinata grit her teeth. She officially decided, right then and there, that she hated this blonde bastard. She formed a fast series of hand seals, making the water rise up behind her. As it began to take form, however, Naruto shot forward and began to attack her with simple taijutsu. Well, simple for him. For Hinata it felt as if she was fighting her father in a death match. She tried to keep control of her jutsu, but when she received a hard punch to the gut that literally had the air in her lungs screaming as it left in a hurry, the jutsu predictably collapsed, and her along with it. She slumped over, coughing, clutching to Naruto in order to keep herself standing, as her legs had lost all strength in them. Naruto stared at her, heaving and coughing. With a grunt, he slung her under his arm like a sack of potatoes. Definitely not the most delicate person, Hinata noted dryly, but she had neither the strength or the will to get out of his grip. The trip was mainly done in silence. When they were near Tazuna's house, Kakashi appeared in a swirl of leaves. Hello, you two, he said, and then raised an eyebrow at Hinata's disheveled state and her seemingly unconscious form under the blonde's arm. Oh my god, you did kill her, he said as he hastily picked up a stick and began poking her. Hinata snarled and swatted the stick away since she didn't have enough strength to do much else. Kakashi sighed in fake relief. Oh good, she's not dead, he remarked, tossing the stick over his shoulder. Well, come on. Tsunami-san made dinner for us. That said, Kakashi lifted Hinata in a much more delicate manner, carrying her bridal style towards Tsunami's house. Hinata mumbled, never train with that guy. It's bad for your health. Kakashi chuckled. I'm surprised you survived, he remarked dryly. Hinata sighed, save me some of the food, I don't think I can eat right now. Kakashi shrugs, sure thing. By the time they made it to the house, Hinata was already asleep. Kakashi took her up to her room and laid her on the futon. He closed the door and walked down, joining the others at the dinner table. Naruto had removed his mask to eat. The silence was somewhat tense, Tazuna and his family not knowing how to address either of the quiet boys. Surprisingly, it was Naruto who broke the silence. Uchiha, did you complete the exercise? Sasuke scowled. No, I got up about 2/3 of the way up. Naruto was about to say and not good enough when Kakashi hastily intervened. Oh, Naruto, I was wondering, what did you train Hinata in today? Nice save, Hatake. He mentally gave himself a pat on the back. Her elemental affinity. Kakashi raised an eyebrow in surprise. Really? Don't you think that might be a little much? It takes a great deal of both control and capacity in order to do anything even remotely damaging, he stated seriously. She has the control, but she lacks the power. Luckily, she will not need it, he stated cryptically. Kakashi raised an eyebrow, but before he could say anything the young boy, Inari, spoke. Why do you all even train if you're going to die anyway? The table grew deathly quiet. Sasuke glared angrily at the boy. Tsunami chastised her son. Inari, apologize right now. Why? He said angrily. It's the truth. Gato will kill them all. Naruto finished his food and began speaking as he once again placed his mask over his face as he wiped his hands. Fool boy. He said, his voice once again hollow and uncaring. He turned to him, making the younger boy take a step back. When the blonde finally turned and began walking up the stairs, Inari regained some semblance of his former gusto. He was about to yell something out when Kakashi stepped in once again. Listen, Inari. You can either stay here and let Gato roll over you, or you can stand up and fight. A great man once told me, there are no weak soldiers under a good commander. Naruto and Hinata were once again going through the same exercise of Hinata attempting to complete her task when Sasuke emerged from the foliage. They both stopped and turned to him, Naruto being the first to speak. Have you completed the tree walking? He asked simply. Sasuke nodded. Show me. He commanded. Sasuke narrowed his eyes almost imperceptibly, but obeyed nonetheless and walked up a nearby tree. Naruto nodded. Good, now, you will begin the second step of this training. He turned and stepped up on the water. Water walking. What the hell is the point of all this? Sasuke asked angrily. Teach me something useful. He demanded. Without enough control, my training of you would be worthless, Uchiha. I suggest you get to work, or find your own training. Sasuke glared at him, and in a huff leapt down from the tree and left. Naruto watched him leave with indifference. He turned back to Hinata just in time to see her finish her hand seals. Never let down your guard, she said with very smug smirk as a column of swirling water formed in front of her, and shot straight towards the blonde Jinchuriki. Naruto stood perfectly still as the column of rushing water hit him with the force of a freight train. Hinata smirked sadistically at the fact that she had finally gotten the better of him. Yes, she roared, momentarily throwing all poise and dignity out the window. Are you quite finished? The familiar voice stopped her celebration dead. She slowly turned and saw Naruto standing in the exact same place as before. Completely unchanged except for the fact that he was now soaking wet. Hinata gawked at him. How are you still standing? You said this was one of the most powerful water's jutsu that you knew. Naruto nodded. True, but so far, we have merely been training in the forming of the attack. Now, I will teach you how to actually put a great deal of power behind it. Hinata looked puzzled as she spoke. But, isn't the attack strength equivalent to the amount of chakra one puts into it? I put roughly 1/4 of my chakra. That won't be enough to hurt that Zabuza guy, or that hunter Nin. Naruto nodded, but Hinata was sure he was smiling beneath his mask. True, but I have a way to remedy that. Now that you've actually hit me with the jutsu, we can start the second part of your training. Hinata refrained the urge to cringe. And, just what is the second part? She could have sworn his eyes flashed red for a split second. Kakashi was standing on the bridge reading his familiar orange book when a familiar chakra reached his senses. He looked to his left and found Sasuke approaching him. Yes, Sasuke, what can I do for you? Train me, he demanded. Kakashi's eye narrowed almost imperceptibly. What? No, please. Naruto was assigned to your training, he replied blandly. Sasuke humphed and crossed his arms. That idiot only trains Hinata and makes me do some stupid chakra control exercises. Kakashi looked to the genin. Did you finish tree walking? He nodded. And I assume water walking was next, he said, to which Sasuke nodded again. Well then, get to it, Kakashi said simply, turning a page of his book. Sasuke snarled through his teeth. This is ridiculous, he said angrily. He would have said more, but Kakashi interrupted him. Sasuke, either you learn the water walking exercise, or you learn on your own. Believe me when I tell you these chakra control exercises will be necessary at some point, so you might as well get to it. Sasuke's fists clenched, he stalked off without another word. Kakashi sighed. Then he looked down at his book, giggling perversely as he turned to yet another page of his seemingly never-ending story. Kakashi was once again standing on the bridge, watching Tazuna, as his handful of men continued to work on their respective tasks when a thick mist rolled in. He shifted his eyes from left to right and placed his book in his pocket before walking next to Tazuna. What a strange mist. It came out of nowhere. The bridge builder muttered. Tazuna. Kakashi spoke seriously. Gather your workers and leave now. Noticing the seriousness of his voice, Tazuna knew that something was about to go down. Guys. Work's over for today, go home now. He called to his men who all grumbled in response, leaving. Tazuna, go get the rest of my team, they should be in the forest near your house. Kakashi spoke seriously, uncovering his Sharingan. Tazuna nodded and immediately ran off. Kakashi watched him leave from the corner of his eye and then turned to the thick wall of mist that slowly encroached on him. Well, Zabuza, I didn't think you'd be back on your feet so soon. Kakashi remarked blandly, spreading out his chakra to dispel the mist around his immediate area. You obviously underestimated me, Kakashi. Came the demon of the mist's voice from all around him. Kakashi looked, eyes darting this way and that way, and finally saw both Zabuza and the hunter Nin that had rescued him appear out of the mist, like specters or ghosts. Zabuza unhooked his Kubikiri while Haku vanished into the mist. You don't seriously think you can beat both of us? Kakashi took out two kunai. I don't need to beat you, I just have to stall you until Naruto gets here. He said, smirking. Ah, you put too much faith in that kid Kakashi. I've seen him fight, he won't catch me off guard again. And this time, he'll be facing both Haku and myself. Still, I'm surprised he's alive. Kakashi laughed mirthlessly, you're still underestimating him. Do you want to know by what alias that boy is known by throughout the world? Zabuza raised an eyebrow. Sure, why not? It's similar to your actually. The demon of Konohagakure. Kakashi said, his mask curved upwards in a malicious smile. Zabuza immediately stiffened. What? That kid is the Konoha elite who allegedly killed the Lightning Daimyo and his entire guard? Kakashi smirked. Over 50 enemy ninja, not even I could do that, Zabuza, and neither could you even with the silent killing techniques. Zabuza snarled. It doesn't matter, I'll kill you now, then I'll kill the brat. He spat out before vanishing into the mist. Kakashi stiffened as a dome of ice mirrors appeared around him. Well now, this could be a problem. Katon, Gokaku no Jutsu. Sasuke yelled, sending another fireball towards a now heavily burnt tree. As the fireball crashed against the wood, the tree gave a long groan of pain before it toppled over. Sasuke would have started another set of hand seals, but just then Tazuna burst through the tree line looking frantic. Sasuke turned to the older man with a puzzled expression on his face. What's wrong? Tazuna panted hard as he leaned on his knees. Kakashi, bridge, trouble. He gasped out. Sasuke's eyes widened slightly. Come on, Naruto and Hinata are this way. He said, running off, Tazuna groaning as he followed. I'm getting way too old for this crap. He muttered, following the Uchiha. Moments later the two came across Naruto and Hinata. The girl was standing atop a river while Naruto stood a few feet away. When they both noticed Tazuna's presence, they stopped their exercise and turned to them. Tazuna says there's trouble at the bridge. Sasuke said. Naruto nodded and shifted through his pouch before pulling out 2 soldier pills. He tossed one to Sasuke and another to Hinata. Take them, they will replenish your chakra. The two took them wordlessly while Naruto formed 2 shadow clones. Tazuna, these 2 will escort you. he said before turning to his two teammates. Uchiha, Hyuga, I suggest you keep up, he stated simply before taking to the treetops. Who the hell said he was in charge? Sasuke thought, annoyed. Hinata followed close behind their third teammate. The three came across a mist-filled bridge. Naruto turned to Hinata and Sasuke. Uchiha, you come with me, Hyuga, you know what to do, he said before walking ahead. Hinata nodded once before activating her Byakugan and leaping off to one side of the bridge, vanishing into the cool mist that blanketed the area. Sasuke was annoyed. He and Hinata had formed some kind of plan, and not being in on it was grating on his nerves. His teeth and walked up to Naruto, grabbing him roughly by his shoulder. Hey dash, he began, but was immediately cut off as the blonde rounded on him and gripped his throat with a grip, strong enough to stop him from speaking, but not strong enough to cut off his air supply completely. This battle, Uchiha, is no place for your petty pride, and whether you like it or not, I am in charge. Quite frankly, were it not my mission, I would lead you to your foolish and worthless fate. However, seeing as how your and the Hyuga's survival is my responsibility, then I must take the proper measures to ensure your safety. Therefore, Sasuke couldn't do much else other than cough as the living weapon smashed his fist into his gut. His eyes rolled to the back of his head and he fell limp. Naruto, with a casual flick of his wrist, tossed him aside, forming a shadow clone to drag him away to safety as he continued his trek into the mist. He came across the scene where Kakashi's fight took place moments later. The area was littered with Senbon needles, puddles of water, shuriken, kunai, blood, and a large jagged trench ran across the ground, no doubt the result of Kakashi's infamous Raikiri. The copy Nin himself was leaning against the railing of the bridge, a large slash across his chest, which he had cauterized to stop the bleeding. Several more gashes ran across his arms and legs, but none were too serious. He walked over and knelt beside the fallen copy ninja, checking his pulse, noting that he indeed was still alive. Kakashi groaned, opening his eyes blearily and looking into the shadows that covered Naruto's face. You're late, he managed to whisper out before falling unconscious again. HN, was his bland reply as he stood and unsheathed both his scimitars, before walking further into the mist. Kakashi was barely out of his visual range before he felt a shift in the air. He took one step back as Zabuza's massive Zanbato swung across his face, nearly hitting him, before vanishing again into the thick mist. Naruto stood, perfectly still. He felt another shift in the wind and managed to sidestep in time to avoid another swing, which buried the sword deep into the ground. Zabuza pulled the blade out and once again vanished into the mist. You can't keep this up forever, kid, Zabuza's voice echoed around him, hoping to distract him. Naruto knew. Seconds later another swing came from behind him. Naruto this time was able to detect exactly where it was coming from, and so he pivoted on his heel, blocked Zabuza's blade with his own, the metals meeting with a loud clang of steel hitting steel. Zabuza chuckled. The demon of Konoha? Really, you're not so impressive, he stated. Naruto pushed him off and spread out his chakra to dispel the mist around him. Naruto said nothing as he settled himself into a fighting stance. Zabuza leapt up high, bringing his blade down on the young Jinchuriki. Naruto crossed his blades and blocked the strike. Your pet hunter Nin is not here? The blonde asked, dubious, as Zabuza beating Kakashi so badly without receiving much injury was highly unlikely. Zabuza chuckled. He's around, but I don't need him to beat you, he stated. HN, Naruto replied before shoving Zabuza back. He followed it up with a leaping spin kick to the man's neck. Zabuza ducked under the blow and then tried to hit the blonde as he landed with a downwards diagonal swing. Naruto put the blade in his left hand in a reverse grip, blocking the strike. He then spun around while somehow managing to keep the blade in the same position and delivered a swift sweep kick. Zabuza grunted as his back hit the floor. He placed both hands on the ground over his shoulders and lifted himself up, spreading his legs and spinning with a split kick. Naruto, as a result, received a kick square to his lower jaw, sending him stumbling back. Zabuza righted himself and charged at Naruto, picking up his sword mid-run and swinging it in an attempt to cleave the blonde's head off. Naruto, by reflex, leaned back just as Zabuza's blade swung across, extremely close, so close in fact that Naruto could feel and hear the very tip of Zabuza's blade scrape against his face mask. As soon as the blade passed, Naruto sprang forward, leaping high and delivering a solid knee right between Zabuza's eyes, sending the man reeling. He raised both blades as he passed over and brought them down to stab the man in the chest when a mirror of ice appeared between his blades and Zabuza. The two scimitars pierced the ice mirror, making various cracks appear all across it. Naruto pulled out both blades and leapt back. Haku's form appeared in the cracked mirror that was already repairing itself. "I will not let you harm Zabuza-sama," he stated. "Ah, the dog comes to defend the master yet again." Naruto spoke blandly as he turned to Zabuza. "You would have this one fight all of your battles, Zabuza?" He snorted. "You are no demon. Just another weak shinobi that hides behind a shield." Zabuza glared at Naruto as he picked himself up. "Haku, stay out of this," Zabuza said, snarled as his eyes burned with anger. Haku looked hesitant for a moment before he nodded, and both he and the mirror vanished in a swirl of water. Naruto would have smirked, so predictable. Taking on one was easy enough, taking on both, not so easy. Zabuza stood and charged at Naruto again, aiming his strike to the blonde's legs. Naruto jumped up. As the blade passed beneath him, he kicked it down hard, making it hit the stone floor of the bridge with a screech of metal against rock. When he landed, he immediately delivered a quick kick to Zabuza's face. He remained on one leg as he bent his leg back and delivered another to his ribs, followed by one more to his face, and then a roundhouse kick with his other leg which sent Zabuza face down to the cold hard floor. Naruto rushed forward, but Zabuza regained his bearings in time to deliver a mule kick to the blonde's chest, using him as a platform to roll forward and get back to his feet. Naruto grunted as he wiped his chest free of some imaginary dust. Zabuza's brow was marred in sweat, and he suddenly felt drained. "What is this? What the hell is going on? What's wrong with me?" "HN," came Naruto's hollow voice. "I see it is already taking effect." "What is?" Zabuza growled out. "You see, Zabuza, there is a small detail of the hidden mist technique that not many really know about," the blonde stated in a flat tone, not even hinting at any emotion. "When the mist is created, there is always a minute amount of chakra that remains in each droplet. In order to keep it in place after just a few moments, the chakra is dissolved into nothing, which means it must constantly be replaced by more chakra. However, the chakra is so minute you hardly really notice it. You have used this jutsu so much that it is practically a subconscious exercise." A slight pause. "Therefore, you have not noticed that my own partner has been draining the chakra from your hidden mist in preparation for her own attack. Judging from how you look, I would say she has roughly 1/3 of your chakra. Add to that the chakra you spent fighting Kakashi, which would be about another 1/3, and finally the fact that you have been keeping this thick mist up for so long, that would be another 1/3. Meaning that you have nothing left." Bullshit. No one can see and manipulate chakra to such an extent, Zabuza said, his voice coming out with more conviction than what he truly felt, as he felt even weaker and weaker with each passing second. "Ah, but this person has a bloodline, specifically designed to see chakra." Naruto turned his head. "Hinata," he called, and in seconds the mist seemed to swirl about and condense. Roughly 20 to 30 feet away was the Hyuga heiress to their right. The mist condensed, finishing her hand seals. Hinata yelled out, "Suitun, Daibakufa no Jutsu." She poured all of her chakra into that technique, adding to that what she had stolen from Zabuza already. The girl was so close to him he didn't have enough time to dodge. He raised Kubikiri to act as a shield, but in doing so, left his side wide open. Before Hinata's attack hit him, an ice mirror appeared between the pillar of water and the demon of the hidden mist. The pressure of the attack cracked the mirror, but did not break through it. Naruto frowned in distaste and was about to move forward and finish Zabuza himself when movement caught the corner of his eye. He looked and found the hunter Nin approaching Hinata, ready to kill her. Naruto shot forward, leaving Zabuza, and appeared between Hinata and Haku. He charged wind chakra in his right hand and compressed it, forming it into a tight ball or grenade of chakra. Futon, Shoha. The ball of tightly compressed air exploded in Haku's face, sending him flying back like a rocket, skidding across the floor, leaving a trail of dust in his wake. Naruto relaxed. After that attack, the hunter Nin was most likely dead or unconscious. He turned back to Zabuza. Hinata's attack finally shattered the mirror and slammed into Zabuza, who did not have the strength left to stand up to the attack, and was overwhelmed. Naruto saw the pillar of water slam into the edge of the bridge. Finally it died down. He turned to Hinata, who was on her hands and knees, panting after the exertion. Rest, was all he said before walking towards the now crippled Mist Nin. Zabuza was slowly trying to stand. The attack had broken 2 of his ribs, and the eventual hit against the edge of the bridge had also broken his left collarbone, leaving his left arm nearly useless. He looked and saw Naruto approaching him. He blinked and the living weapon, directly in front of him. He snapped his eyes up and tried to swing his sword. Naruto sheathed the one in his left hand and caught Zabuza's wrist, stopping his strike. He then reared back his other blade, and with a swift, sickening slice stabbed the demon of the hidden mist straight through his stomach. Zabuza's eyes widened as he hunched forward. Naruto's eyes widened slightly when Zabuza exploded in a cloud of smoke, revealing the hunter Nin. Naruto turned and saw Zabuza struggling to stand where the mist hunter had lain at the end of his wind shockwave. He turned to the hunter Nin, whose mask had broken due to the chakra-enforced attack, revealing a feminine face. You took his place. Naruto sounded genuinely puzzled. Why? Haku coughed up blood, staining the gray floor of the bridge red. Because, he rasped out. He is someone I would protect, at any cost. Even your own life? Haku nodded and smiled at the taller blonde. Was this a mission given to you? It's a mission I took on myself. Why? The feminine boy let out a small laugh. You'll have to learn for yourself. Naruto didn't move or say anything for a moment before he raised his left hand. Rest. With a swift chop, Haku's neck broke and he slumped, dead. Naruto pushed the Kiri Nin off of his blade and then turned to Zabuza, who was now standing upright. The blonde would have moved, but that's when there was a loud clapping coming from one end of the bridge. The two turned and found Gato and his men. Well, Zabuza, getting your ass kicked by a bunch of kids, I see. Zabuza grunted and turned to Naruto. It looks like my fight isn't with you anymore. Naruto could say one thing about Zabuza's final battle. He certainly lived up to the name Bloody Mist. Naruto stood before 2 graves deep in thought when he felt someone approaching. He didn't even have to turn to see it was Hinata. We're waiting for you down at the bridge, she said. Hinata, came his hollowed voice. When you look at these 2 graves, what do you see? He asked. Hinata didn't know the answer other than the obvious dirt and a cheap grave marker. So, she remained silent. Naruto answered after a few moments. When I look at these graves, I see only that these 2 shinobi stand as a testament to these continents' twisted history of death and betrayal. One that is a never-ending spiral of hate and war. Hinata remained quiet for a moment before she spoke. I always knew there was something different about you, where most would see 2 shinobi who died side by side, regaining their lost honor. You see the hard, cold reality of things. She turned and began leaving. Before she was out of earshot, she looked over her shoulder and spoke. You are, possibly, the most intimidating person I've ever met. What made you that way? HN. No more words were exchanged as Hinata turned and left. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.